to discover what I've come to understand is those discoveries are not Microsoft is something that talked to us about. So we were getting this far back.
Where is the camera?
So,
Okay.
and actually,
Jack's not here today.
Sit next to the
yeah, as well.
how you been doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good. Can't believe this is November, but you're going to great. They go next time I get a chance.
I'm not sure. I know we had a friend I figured one of them was, I thought I was thinking it was Jamaica.
Joe Rice used to be the
I was at Turtle a few days ago and discovered Marilyn's waitress there.
Yeah, I knew she was. Yeah, I've not run into her out there, but I knew she was. Somebody told me she was doing that. Maybe she told me.
I didn't pull for it.
So we got the clocks changed. That was my big. That was my big. No, I walked. No, I didn't get it physically myself. Yeah, yeah. Because I walked in yesterday. I said, you know, just now I'm gonna be sitting in the meeting tomorrow, thinking, wow, this has been a long meeting. Such a big level back and on. But what I was afraid was the amount of technology we have in this place. Don't tell me that it's all NASA. Like do it downlink from some satellite to take off the whole. That's what I was assured. It's the most low-tech thing we have in the whole building.
It's also the one I can understand.
Yeah. Although it's actually still 2 minutes off.
Slow or fast?
I did the same as you.
All right, we're going to, as soon as Petra gets back in her, I caught you. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. If everybody would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. I think we have Jack Coe is missing today. He is on vacation or a trip or something, so the rest of us are here. We'll start with the approval of minutes. The first item is the approval of the Town Council minutes for the workshop of October 3rd, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
And with that, any changes, comments? All right.
I don't remember being absent.
No, you weren't there.
I wasn't there at the third?
You were sorely missed, as a matter
You
of
were.
fact. Yeah.
That's right. you
Drunk
couldn't
again.
have. Okay.
Okay.
By the way, we're streaming this meeting this time, so you might want to
It's still
not raise that possibility, but anyway. All right, with that, all in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, they're approved. All right, and the second, our approval of the minutes of the October 3rd, 2017 Town Council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Any changes, comments? All right, all in favor of approving as written?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, they're approved. All right. As part of Mayor's comments, I just have a couple things I'd like to update the council and our audience on. Two things that are going on right now. One has been the beach sand scraping. I think, as everybody knows, at our last meeting, we approved, as a consequence of Tropical Storm Irma, two projects that have the same end result, which is to try to help re-nourish our dunes as a result of the destruction or impact from the tropical storm. We have two projects underway, or we're doing this project in two phases. The first phase was under an emergency permit that allowed us to immediately address properties that either had structures approximate to them or commercial property approximate to them. That phase one, for the most part, impacted the ocean course, the areas from essentially the practice tee at the ocean course down through most of and almost to the beach club. And then the second part of that project was to hit the area of the beach along the Turtle Point Golf Course. That phase is now completed. All of that work is done. I understand that from a preliminary standpoint, it appears that that part has come in under the budget that you all approved. We are now awaiting phase two. I think, as you all remember, for phase two, we had to put forth a permit request to get a special permit to do the sand scraping on that part of the island. The public comment period for that permit closes today or tomorrow. Yeah, I think it closes today, and the last I heard, I don't think any public comments have actually been made. So I'm not anticipating any problems with that permit. And once we have approval, then the contractor, they've left some equipment here, but the contractor will come back to the island and will complete those portions of the island. And as you recall, that part of the project got more of our private property owners, particularly along Eugenia up through Mariner's Watch and so on. So that project's moving along, and I don't know if anybody's had a chance to get out and look at the dunes, but you know, I think I was impressed. I mean, I think it's really been able to do in a few weeks what would have taken 1 or 2 or 3 years for us able to do in terms of natural accretion. The second item we have has to do with the OCRM jurisdictional lines. I think everybody knows that since the last town council meeting, OCRM has had issued preliminary or proposed new jurisdictional lines, which are the baseline and the setback line that impact development and redevelopment of properties along the beach. Their initial proposal allowed for a public comment period through to November 6th, and then the intent was that those lines would go into effect at the end of the year. Because there has been significant amount of concern, both from communities up and down the South Carolina coast, but also especially by property owners that are impacted. Late last week, the OCRM issued a revised timeline. They are going to move back and extend the public comment period until April of next year, and they will also move back the implementation period. So in light of that, the town has been doing work with our beach consultant, Coastal Science and Engineering. We have had them working over the last couple weeks to review the technical work from OCRM to try to understand what OCRM's methodology is, what drove their lines, with the intent that we would at some point provide feedback to the and take a position and provide feedback to OCRM. That's still in process. We've got we have just gotten on Friday a draft from Coastal Science with their conclusions and recommendations. As soon as that is final, I will share it obviously with all of the town council, and I think we will also make it available to property owners that are potentially impacted by the changes. I think the one thing that people should recognize if they haven't looked at the lines, for the most part, the proposed lines have moved significantly landward for much of the island, which is counter to the long-term, what has been the long-term accretion experience that we've seen on the island. And I think Coastal Science and Engineering's initial conclusions suggest that there are, in fact, legitimate concerns and questions that we should be raising with respect to those lines. So, so that'll be taking place. We'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks, and we will share with the broader community and with property owners as that moves forward. So those are the only two things I wanna update. With that, I'll move to citizens' comments. As everyone recalls, we have two citizens' comment periods, one at the beginning and one at the end of the meeting. The one at the beginning is for comments that are related to things that are on the agenda. So with that, I will open up the floor if there's anybody who has a comment they'd like to make. None? All right. With that, we will move on to new business, and the first new business is a recommendation to amend the text of Chapter 12, Land Use Planning and Zoning of the Town of Kiawah Island, South Carolina zoning ordinance by amending Article 2, Division 2 zoning map districts by rezoning the property located at 1 Kiawah Beach Drive from Commercial Zoning District to RST2. And John, I think you're going to do a short overview of this item. Okay.
So today's particular request is a rezoning, and this is in reference to case number ZREZ-08-17-0071. The particular request is a rezoning located at 1 Kiawah Beach Drive, and this would be potentially going from the commercial zoning district to the RST2 resort zoning district. And this is in reference to parcel number 207-06-00399. The property is approximately 1.19 in acre size. And it's located in the West Beach area. And here you can see an aerial. Just to remind council that this area came before you just recently during the summer as part of the other rezonings for the area. The particular straw market parcel, as it being a commercial currently, was sort of left out of that particular group of parcels. So that's why it's sort of before you now. So this is existing zoning map, as stated, the red indicating the subject parcel showing the commercial zoning district. And the potential zoning district that this would be going to is the RST2 resort zoning district. The future land use for this area is designated resort. And if there are any other particular questions, Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 7-0.
Any questions of John? Okay. I think the only piece of information also that I'd like to add that is not in the packet with respect to this rezoning is in 2010, the town concluded a development agreement with Kiawah Island Resort that dealt with the zoning and the allowable development of the entire area at West Beach. And as part of that development agreement, the property that we're dealing with today, lights going on and off. The property we were dealing with today was in fact in the development agreement, agreed to be rezoned from commercial to RST 2. What we discovered several months ago in the process of rezoning and realigning the rest of that area is that although in the development agreement in 2010 it was supposed to become RST2, it had actually never, the underlying paperwork had actually never been rezoned. So this rezoning from commercial to RST2 is actually in agreement with and really carries out the intent of the development agreement that was agreed to in 2010. So with that, I will ask for a motion again to amend the text of Chapter 12, Land Use Planning and Zoning of the Town of Kiawah Island, South Carolina zoning ordinance by amending Article 2, Division 1, zoning map districts by rezoning the property located at 1 Kiawah Beach Drive from commercial zoning district to the RST2 zoning district. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second. And any other conversation? And again, the process, a zoning change like this is required to go through and be approved or recommended by Planning Commission, which has occurred. The intent is also to have a public hearing that occurred prior to this meeting today, and then this constitutes the first reading. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, and then we also have several ordinance changes, all of which were handled at first reading at the Town Council meeting last month. The first is ordinance 2017-20, an ordinance to amend Article 16, Beach Management, Chapter 4, Beach and Dune Protection. This ordinance is the ordinance that deals with the digging of holes on the beach and results in a change to our ordinance that would prohibit metal shovels on the beach. It was approved last month at first reading. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2017-20?
So moved.
A second? Did I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any conversation, questions?
Will the rental agencies be required to inform visitors about this? I mean, that'll become one of the rules so visitors will know?
Part of all the rental ordinance changes that are happening, we're going to have an actual education outreach program, if you will, and this will be brought to their attention.
Okay, so that they'll add it to their requirements.
And I would guess when we get to, in about 5 minutes, we're gonna get to the short-term rental ordinance, and as part of that, we'll point out there are now requirements that in each of the rental properties, all of the different rules and regulations that relate to rentals are there. This would be, I think this would be included as part of that. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right,
We have to vote on it.
oh,
We have to
did I
vote.
not get the vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, that's approved. All right, the second ordinance is ordinance 2017-19, which is an ordinance to amend Article 8, Health and Sanitation, Chapter 1, General Provisions. Again, this was approved at first reading last month. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2017-19?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Again, ordinance 2017-21 is an ordinance amending Article 16, Chapter 4, Section 216-406 beach walkovers. Again, this was approved last month at first reading. Do I have a motion to approve on second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, comments? At the last month's first reading, there was some amount of discussion of the impact of this on property owners, especially the community association. There had been some questions about whether we had especially talked with the community association about the impact of this on their boardwalks. And my understanding now, Jimmy, is that's done, right?
Good conversation, and appreciate the changes that are included here.
So we're good. Okay. All in favor of approving this ordinance? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, and finally, we have ordinance 2017-09, an ordinance to amend Article 15, General Offenses, Chapter 8, Short-Term Rental Permit and Regulations. Do I have a motion to approve on second reading?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Again, any questions or discussion?
In section 15-802, it says each rental guest shall acknowledge receipt of such rules and regulations. How, does that have to be in writing, or how is that?
Permitted legal, for all rental properties, and those agents or owners, when they renew their business license this year, it will be incorporated in our online submittal, that it is a mandatory field that they have to check, or they can print it, read it, whatever they want to do with it. So it'll be a mandatory field, and they have to acknowledge before.
The guest has to acknowledge it, okay,
Well, no, the agent.
okay.
Property manager or the owner has to acknowledge it.
Okay, well, it says each rental guest.
We left it up to the property managers or the owners to actually notify the guests.
Okay,
It's very, when you all part of the outreach program, we explain the entire revision of this ordinance.
And one of the things that we'll be doing is we'll be working with Stephanie in the communications office to. Stephanie, is your mic on? No, it's not. There we go. One of the things that we're doing is that we're going to be working with Stephanie in the communications office to look at putting together material that will be required to be placed in the rental unit, so that also the guest that's renting the property will also have access to the rules. Right now, they're located in binders, but we feel like that might be a little bit cumbersome. So I talked with Stephanie and we talked with Bruce, and we will be looking at doing maybe some sort of magnet or something that hit some point. So we are looking through an education process of different ways to be able to reach to the renters.
I mean, we clearly are gonna need to do, and intend to do a pretty significant education process. I think we're gonna need to put together a variety of communications on this, because there are a number of changes in this, and it is a complete, and there were, you know, at the last meeting, there were several questions or recommendations by different council members, which we have tried to include in here. I know one of them was a desire that all advertisements would include the business license
Right.
number.
That's a good
That's
one.
been incorporated. So I think to the extent we can, we've incorporated all of the feedback that we've gotten.
Okay,
So with that, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. All right. We have Resolution 2017-3, which deals with the South Carolina Local Government Investment Pool. And I believe Dorota, there you are. Dorota, you can handle this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, we're asking today the mayor and the town council to approve this resolution, which is needed to open an investment account with the South Carolina Investment Pool. And after doing some research and given the restrictions, and looking at the restrictions given by the state statute, the town's investment instruments are pretty limited. And based on the performance of the investment pool that shows pretty steady growth, outperforms its benchmark, which is a 90-day treasury bill. And in October was about 1.1% short-term variable interest rate. We decided to move our investment from the current BNY Mellon to investment pool. And in order to open the account, this resolution is required.
This is what's required in order to.
Yes, sir.
to
So
open
after this meeting, I will start the process going and we'll move the money there.
Okay.
And just one more note, that currently they only have the short-term investment options, but they are working on a long-term portfolio that will be available for next quarter.
Okay.
So we'll have some more.
And I know that Dorota and Stephanie and John have been, you know, looking at this at length, because we have for a long time, you know, sit on some fairly significant cash reserves. Obviously, we have a desire and intent to remain, you know, prudent and conservative in our investment approach, but at the same time, over the last few years with low interest rates, it's almost like putting your money under the mattress. You don't earn anything
Yes.
on it. And so I think the perception and the experience of other entities, this is used by
It's very
a lot
positive.
of municipalities and
correct.
special districts in South Carolina, is that we can at least, we won't get rich off it, but we will incrementally certainly improve our investment returns.
That's correct.
Over what we have today.
Yeah, the state of South Carolina, I was kind of hopeful when we started the investment review process that we could up our investment income by a couple $100,000 a year. But the state of South Carolina's requirements as to what a town may invest in or can invest in are so restrictive that this pool at the moment is about as good as it gets. And if they do come up with some longer term options, even going out 2 or 3 years, that would also help. But right now, we don't really have that option.
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion to approve resolution 2017-3?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next item is a staff proposal that relates and concerns the town's, it is a recommendation for the town to adopt a policy with respect to participating in the cost of retiree health care for retired employees. What I am going to do is, for the moment, I'd like to take this item off the agenda for 2 reasons. One, staff, I think, in the last few days has gotten some one-on-one independent input and conversation from council members that I think they would like to be able to think about and possibly incorporate in their proposal. So I think we will come back in December we will bring this back for review in December, but I think the staff would like the opportunity to make some modifications. Second of all, while we don't have for the most part any employees who at the moment would benefit today from this, and we don't have a lot of employees who are at or near retirement, nonetheless, anytime you adopt a policy around retiree medical, it has long-term financial implications, and I honestly don't want to handle that unless I have the entire council. Since Jack's not here, I'd like to do that in a meeting where we have all the council members here and able to participate. So unless there's any objection, I'd like to just table this, and we'll handle it next month. Everybody okay with that? And that takes us then to a recommendation with respect to the town's supplemental contribution to the employee medical health care plan. Stephanie, you want me to handle this, or do you want to? All right. The town, like most municipalities in South Carolina, not all, but most municipalities in South Carolina and special districts like the St. John's Fire District, our employees participate in the state health care plan, which is a calendar year plan. So the new rates for 2018 have been released by the state. And when the state defines the rates for employers, for municipalities, essentially what they do is define a total overall cost for employees by different categories for that year. And they also mandate that there is a minimum contribution that anybody who participates in this plan, any entity, the town or whatever, there's a minimum contribution that town needs to make. But it's defined just as that, a minimum. It then goes on to say that any town can, if they choose, provide a higher town contribution to employee health care. And they do that because they recognize that they are trying to devise these rates for all of South Carolina. And in South Carolina, you have entities that vary widely in terms of their financial position. I mean, you've got little towns with 3 or 4 people and no tax base. You have very large cities like, you know, Charleston and Columbia and Greenville. You have towns that are in very, very different competitive situations in terms of their ability to attract workers. So the whole intent of the rate setting is to establish a minimum, but then allow towns the ability, looking at their own situation, to determine whether they wish to, in fact, provide a higher contribution to their employee health care. The town has had a fairly long practice of subsidizing or providing a supplement to the minimum state required contribution. Essentially what they've calculated is the amount of supplement that would be required to make employee-only coverage be totally town paid, and then apply that same supplement to all of the other categories. For 2018, that would be a supplement of $132.80, or Dorota, are we just rounding it to 133? Is that what I saw? So the staff recommendation, in line with past practice, is to approve for 2018 a supplement to the state mandated contribution, a supplement of $133 to apply to all of the different categories of coverage. So that's the background on their recommendation, and so with that, I would ask for a motion, and then we can open it up for discussion. So I would make a motion to approve for 2018 a supplement of $133 to the state required minimum town contribution for employees participating in the state health care program.
That's $133 a month.
$133 a month, yes, that's $133 a month. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, let me open it to questions or discussion.
Well, I think that's me.
I think it is.
That's more obvious. Now, the good news is
That's why we got the long
I
explanation
know,
going on
I
the
know.
front end.
Is
yeah.
is this working? Okay. I objected last year on principle because I don't approve of subsidies. I think they're distortive in nature. Good news is I'm going to lose this year by less than I lost last year because there's only 4 people on council, so that's good. I oppose. I'm not opposed to making sure our people are paid correctly and adequately and aggressively. I just think that we should have everyone pay something towards their medical cost. You know, at these numbers, the town's paying 87% of the medical premium. The employees on average are paying 13%. It's not what I would approve if it were my company, and so I would object.
Any other comments, discussion?
Not for me.
Okay, well, with that, I will put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nope.
All right, it passes. All right, and with that, we will turn to other business, which is a quarterly update on our financials from our town treasurer, Dorota.
Yes, so on the next step, you will find the balance sheet and the budget report for the first quarter, ended in September 30th, 2017. And the first, when you look at the balance sheet, was actually right there, the combined fund balances were about 16 million, which is a approximately 600,000 decrease from June 30th, 2017. And of this 16 million, about 37% or 6 million is a general fund, which is unassigned fund balance, could be used up to town's discretion. Then if you look at the budget report, if you turn your page to the budget report, in general, for the first 3 months, the town revenues were reasonable and within the budget. There is a slight 2% negative variance of about 40,000 or 2%, but this variance is pretty much because of the timing issue, how some of the revenues are remitted to the town monthly, and this only shows pretty much 2 months of collection of those revenues. So
Gerard, is that
everything.
mostly a tax? Is that where the,
No, actually, it's a local option,
Okay,
accommodation taxes, hospitality taxes. So whatever we have received in July, it was accrued for June.
but it's those things where other entities are collecting for us and then remitting
That's,
back,
well, that's
yeah.
correct, but hospitality tax, for example, we collect ourselves, but it's due by the 20th of the next month. And this report is prepared on a cash basis, so we don't accrue every month.
Got it.
So that's why there is always this timing issue compared to the budget that is actually prepared on a accrual basis. But everything looks reasonable as far as the revenues, and also looking at the expenditures, they look in line with the budgeted spending, and there is a couple of negative variances. This is the insurance expense that will carry the negative variance through the year, and it's and I think I mentioned it before, but our bridge insurance will actually end up being 20,000 more than what we have budgeted. There is a little positive variance on the directors and officers, but still the net of it is 15,000 over the budget. And also we had the storm and the cleanup cost that we did not budget for. So those are pretty much the negative variances. As far as the capital expenditures, we have not closed the project yet, as there is still some, there is final retainage pending. I think we almost done with all the, I think there was some electrical work to be finished, to release that final pay application, and there's a couple more items. However, it looks like the project is still about 400,000 less than budgeted. And hopefully for the next month, we have everything closed and I can provide you the final accounting for that.
Have we, I mean, one of the concerns we've had, or not concerns, but a question with this building is whether we were going to see, or how much higher we would see our operating costs to be, you know, electricity, irrigation, whatever. Have we gotten enough months experience yet to start to get any sense of that, or is it too soon?
No, we have not, because, for example, like with the water, we actually just transferred the water this month. We had some issues or some transferring the water bill from Thomas Construction to us. So we just transferred that.
That doesn't sound like a problem we would have liked to solve.
Absolutely. So probably when I present maybe 6 months, that would be 6 months will give us a good, idea. Well, we're here for 4 months from that time period, but that would be then a good benchmark to compare to. Right. Landscaping is still kind of in process. There is some additional projects requested, so it's not just the monthly. But with the next presentation, I'll have some better numbers for that.
Rhoda, any questions?
Rhoda, the fund balances that you reported do not include this municipal center, is that correct?
No, sir. No, it does not.
So the drop in fund balances, I'm guessing, is largely the result of moving money into
building, yes, but because we do not report the fixed assets,
right,
or liabilities, like the pension liability, this is more like a cash. That's why we had 2 payments for this building. So I think it was 150 for the Thomas Construction, and it was about 200 maybe 150 for the furnishings.
right.
So right there of that decrease, majority is for this building.
All right, any other questions? Rhoda, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, with no other business, I'll turn over Town Administrator report.
Yes, I just wanted to give 2 updates. In regards to DeRosa's report, you saw the additional about $60,000 for the Tropical Storm Irma cleanup. I submitted, now probably about a month and a half ago, through FEMA, through the State Emergency Management Division, to basically get in line, get in queue, to be able to try to get some of the money reimbursed back. They have not yet set up the meeting yet with any jurisdiction, I believe, but I've been monitoring that, and hopefully we'll get that meeting set up, and we hopefully should get some money reimbursed back for that, but I'm still waiting on eligibility and to see if they will accept our application.
Do we still, is this $50,000 number now pretty final or rusty? I mean, we've still got things on the beach, you know, that we're still replacing, fixing. All the waste containers are gone, the boardwalk, you know, signs. Is that in here, or we're?
It's still in process of being replaced, so we have to report to all of that.
So that $58,000 number is still gonna get a little bit bigger before it gets smaller.
Yes, yes. And then we'll be able to, and all those costs will be submitted with our FEMA application. Also, just as an update, I know Rusty is working with Petra to try and get out the RFP for beach services. And I don't know if we have a timeline. My goal, I said, I'd like for that to get out within the next week or two. So I guess you guys, you're on schedule for that. Wonderful. And that's all the updates now, unless you all have any questions for me.
All right, then we'll go to council member reports, which are both any specific individual comments you have, but also any committee updates for your committees. And Chris, I'll start with you.
From the Public Safety Committee, to remind everybody, we have an opening on the St. John's Fire District Commission. We are accepting applications up until December 4th. So if anybody's interested, they should. I don't know, I'm trying to understand if she's talking to me or no. Me?
No, no.
Okay.
She reminded me.
So we have two applications in queue. We're still accepting them for another almost 4 weeks. The Communications Committee has decided to phase out of the exchange, the Kiowa Exchange that's hosted by the town. There are a number of reasons. The ones that I suppose I would cite most would be that it's pretty lightly used. It's pretty duplicative. Certainly it's duplicative out of Kiowa, which seems to do a better job of coverage. And community forums are much more available today than when the exchange was created several years back. So they'll be phased out over the course of the next month or so. Is that correct? That's it.
John?
Okay, yesterday I went to the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments Board meeting. Nothing really too exciting at the meeting. There was a presentation, I think it was written up in today's Post and Courier, about the walk bike plan. This is a consultant that's been hired using some federal money to come up with a bike and walking path plan for Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester counties. It was interesting. You know, the question raised was, well, where does money come to pay for it? And nobody really had an answer, surprisingly. There was the other part of it that I noticed is there was obviously nothing on Kiowa, but very little on Johns Island. Most of the attention was in North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Charleston, and Somerville, and that area, those areas. Very little in this plan affected or improved anything on Johns Island, which is a little disappointing. There also was no discussion about the status of the 526 extension. There is a CHATS, which is the Charleston Area Transportation Subcommittee of the Council of Governments. There is a meeting next Monday, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more Monday as to what the county thinks, at least, as to the status of the 526 extension. That's all I have.
There wasn't anybody from Johns Island there to question I'm sorry, there wasn't anybody from Johns Island there to question why there wasn't any attention to Johns Island about the bike path?
Well, the mayor of Charleston was there, who covers part of Johns Island.
Okay.
He didn't question
Otherwise,
it.
there is no other part of Johns Island.
But there is no,
That's right, I guess there isn't
Political-
any official
yeah.
group, there are groups, but
Right.
they're not really official groups that would be able to attend that meeting.
well, they could attend, it's a public meeting, and they
Mhm.
could speak in the public comment section, but nobody did.
Okay.
John, has there been any, either in chats or in that group, any updates on timing or spending of any of the projects on the half-cent tax? I'm sorry. The one time I leaned back. On either of those groups, have there been any updated discussions on the timing or plans for any of the half-cent sales tax? Particularly, I mean, the one we're interested in is the Maybank, the flyover at Savannah Highway in Maybank, or Savannah Highway in Maine.
Nothing, there was a presentation on it at the last Chats meeting. We essentially got the same presentation when Catherine Basha came
For the
came
meeting last
here.
month, yeah.
Beyond that, no, what happens, the way the Council of Governments works and the Chats work is there's a small executive committee typically consisting of mayors of Mount Pleasant, Charleston, North Charleston, maybe Somerville, and a couple of the county council members. They pretty much have their own private meetings that discuss those kind of things. They sometimes then update everyone else and sometimes don't.
Mhm.
So we're hoping, I'm hoping at Chats we'll get a better feel for 526 and the half-cent sales tax,
Okay.
but nothing new as of now.
Diana?
The Sea Level Rise Committee had Will Connor from KICA speak to us at our last meeting, and he explained the drainage system and how it works with KICA. And he also discussed some modifications already planned or being explored. And then next month, we plan to have Becky Dennis, the manager of the Keo Island Utility, talk to us about the water and sewage systems and anything they have planned in considering sea level rise. And at Arts Council, we've had 2 events since our last meeting, Jason William and Bill Cunliffe. Both of them were completely sold out, one 410 tickets and the other 288 tickets. We're now holding our piano bars at Church of Our Savior since the Sandcastle has shut down. And our CSO orchestra, which is one of our biggest events of the year, we had about 480 people attend that last Saturday. And in December, we have 2 Christmas events, one at the River Course, the Madrigal Singers, which is College of Charleston, and then the Bernie River Brass Band, which is coming on December 18th.
In your
That's at the
survey?
church.
I'm sorry, that's at Holy Family
Yeah.
Catholic Church.
And the survey is out?
Oh, yes, the survey, I should have put that down. I got an update from Maryland. It came out last Friday, and we already have 395. As of today, 395 responses. It'll be open until, not this Friday, but the next Friday, so almost another 2 weeks. So I think we're doing really well with that
And
many
if you haven't
responses.
filled that out, we would really encourage you to do it. It will be very helpful.
It will be.
This is a tool that will be important, I think, both to the Arts Council members,
Mhm.
as they are trying to look not just to the next year, but I think some years down the road at our arts programs. But I think it's also very helpful to the council
Mhm.
as we're looking at each year at the direction of our arts programs and our funding. And there's, I think, a lot of important questions in that survey that we would really like to get input from. So if you haven't filled it out already, please do. Any other comments?
That's it.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I can comment on committee on behalf of Jack Coe, who's not here, who's the liaison of the BZA. As a reminder, the BZA will have an opening effective January 1. We have one member who's resigning effective January 1, so we will have one opening. So if you know of anyone interested, please have them fill out their application, submit it to Ms. Reynolds.
And have we put that is that on an e-blast or on the website?
I don't know if it's on the website, but did it ever go on e-blast? Yes. No. Okay, well, we'll get that out on the e-blast.
All right. With that, I will again open it up to citizens' comments. If anybody has a comment, get in line and give us your name. Marilyn, give us your name.
Marilyn Olson, 4985 Green Dolphin Way. I'm curious if any of the private boardwalk owners have received letters from the town regarding 2 different categories, one being the unsafe ones and hazard, and the other ones, I don't know if you're waiting until you passed your ordinance today and they're ready to go out in the mail tomorrow to the other ones that are extended beyond the 10 feet. but I know that it was extremely high tide early this week in the morning, and I was climbing up some and under others, and obviously I'm not emergency, but emergency would never manage if I can't.
And I believe the answer to that question is that by now, I think all property owners that have boardwalks that are out of compliance and are not otherwise currently working with the ARB and the town for redesign, I believe all of them now, letters went out last week.
Oh, they went out, it wasn't about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So they fall under the ordinance of last year, which they have a year to comply.
We'll figure that out. I mean, we now have a new ordinance.
Right,
And
as
I
of
think
today, you have a new ordinance,
as
and so
today
I
we
was
have a new
wondering what your
ordinance, and-
timing, if you thought about your timing.
We'll work, we have our town attorney here, so we'll work that out real quickly. But I'm glad you raised that, because I think that's one of the, important points of the ordinance change that we made with the beach walkovers. One of the problems that we had in the old ordinance is it dealt with boardwalks that were out of compliance with state regulations, or essentially with our regulation that dealt with how far out it could extend on the beach and that sort of thing. What we found last year with Hurricane Matthew, and then this year with the tropical storm, where we now had boardwalks that were destroyed or badly damaged, is that we didn't have an ordinance that allowed us, where there was clearly a public safety issue, a aesthetic issue with the beach. We didn't have a clear ordinance where we could step in and at this point say, look, a year is not acceptable. This is a different situation. We need to get the beach cleaned up. We need to have it safe. We did not have an ordinance that allowed us to make that happen, other than, trying to condemn and go through some sort of condemnation proceeding and so on. So one of the changes in the ordinance that we passed today is that we now have the ability to work with a property owner, and it's now potentially a 90-day process rather than a 1-year process.
Correct.
So that will be one of the things we can do, and we'll be talking with our town attorney about how we now deal with the boardwalks that we have.
Very good, thank you.
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. It will come as no surprise that both of my comments have to do with the issue of communications. First one has to do with the OCRM's newly proposed jurisdictional lines. And you mentioned, Craig, that the town would be reviewing the report from CSE, and you'd be sharing that report with council and with the public. Will you also be soliciting input from the public as to its reaction to the CSE report, so that when the town prepares its remarks that will be presented to OCRM, it will include not just CSE comments, not just town council remarks, but input from the public as well?
My reaction is probably no. I don't think, and I can rethink this, but I want to try to give you an answer. I doubt that we will be looking for comments on the Coastal Service and Engineering's report, because what we've asked for them is to...
I wasn't looking for comments on that specifically.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Comments you would include in the comments that you would be presenting to OCRM about the jurisdictional lines, not comments about CSE's report.
Yeah, I haven't thought that far ahead, so I don't know what we'll do there.
And I would urge you in your recommendations to ask OCRM to be sure to include post-Matthew and post-Irma data, because right now that's not being included, and anyone who's been on the beach sees the drastic results from those two storms. The second comment that I wanted to make had to do with the impact on traffic yesterday because of the movement of materials by the resort. I may be wrong, but I sincerely doubt. I got the email from the town at 10:54 a.m. to expect traffic delays, and they'd been going on since 9 o'clock or a little bit before, and I sincerely doubt the resort waited till yesterday to notify the town in Kika that this movement was going to incur. So I would just urge you in the future. I wasn't impacted, but people had airplanes to catch, people had doctor's appointments, and I think the public should know further in advance if there's something that's going to impact the time it will take to get off the island. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis McGill, 100 Pleasant Valley Drive. Two topics. The first I wanted to say, as I mentioned the last time, it's a beautiful facility. And when it was designed, or in the designing stage, I had made a suggestion for safety reasons that there should only be one point of access, and there shouldn't be any access which would interfere with the council's movement or employees' movement. And that was a lot of the reason that I said that, is that was my understanding when I was involved with the building and the design of the Jersey City Municipal Court. Now we had a different group of people coming in, obviously, than are here. But this room is going to be a courtroom as well. And frankly, I don't care what kind of a room it is. It's a public room, as any church is, as Mother Emanuel was, and the most recent one in Texas, where any nut could come in with any kind of a weapon and injure a lot of innocent people. Frankly, I thought even with this design, that there was only going to be one point of entry, and that was going to be in the main area that people would come through to get to, whether it's the employees in the back or this particular section. Today I came in, I tried that door, that was locked.
Supposed to be.
However, the door on this side was not. It was open. And frankly, anybody can walk in, and even though the policy of the town and even its own employee handbook, and I can bring up obviously section 10.03, weapons policy. There is no signage around anywhere, front door, driving in, that there shouldn't be any concealed or any other weapon on this property. I think that kind of a notice should be given, if nothing else. Will it prevent somebody from coming in? This is a wide open space, or standing outside and shooting a gun through the windows. They're not bulletproof glass. Anyhow, I still think it's good to have one place of entry to these kinds of meetings or the court, and have a police officer, at least during the session, checking with a hand wand, if for nothing else, to see if anybody's coming in with a gun, concealed weapon, or a knife, or any other kind of weapon that could be used to injure someone. Anyhow, that was point one.
Judge, and I appreciate those comments. I know you raised those earlier, and they were considered by the Municipal Planning Committee, and I'm glad you pointed out on the back door, because the intent is that there should only be admittance through that front door. So if that's not what we have, we'll take a look at it, and I appreciate your observing that.
I'm concerned not only that I'm here, but other people who are innocent, and and even the council,
and
employees.
And the judge and I've had a conversation as he uses it for courtroom on how he wants to keep it secure. So thank you for raising that comment.
The other thing, well, I had some questions that I presented to Ms. Tillerson, and the one had to do with the employee handbook. And I had indicated in my question to her in a FOIA request, list all sections of the new employee handbook that may be changed or modified without the public vote of a majority of the entire council. She more or less replied that they did not produce anything that would require any kind of an answer. But I bring to the council's attention, and Mayor particularly, I think you're familiar with it, the purpose on the mission statement, or point 1.01, in this paragraph, no supervisor, employee, or council member may make changes to these policies, offer promises, or make commitments that conflict with these policies without the written authority of the mayor. And my question was, what policies would be allowed to be changed only with the written authority of the mayor and not the entire vote of the majority of the council? No response or no indication. And I bring somewhat to the point of, well, I get to 5.0.0, which is the classification system, which talks about classification systems and pay ranges are subject to change at any time. Does that mean with the written consent of the mayor, or does that mean with a majority vote of the council? It's unclear, at least to me. And also 5.04 and 5.05, salary adjustments by the mayor and town council, town administrator, without a vote of the entire council or a majority of the entire council. It was adopted by resolution, not ordinance, and I referred to the ordinance of I believe it's 2502, that the council is the one that decides appointed officers' employees' compensation from time to time, not the mayor and just the town administrator.
Okay, I've heard your comments, and, you know, I think you had those questions within a FOIA request which have been answered. I think that's actually what you're probably reacting to,
Right.
is the answer.
No,
But-
they weren't, the ones that I just posed were not addressed at all. But I intended that the response should cover them, or any other. I don't know, can the mayor just add PTOs to any employee with
Well, but-
written?
But what I'm, and I'm not gonna debate a FOIA request.
No, I'm
here,
just
but-
bringing it to your attention. There are a lot of
but
questions
what
I
I
had,
do
and that
wanna-
question I don't think was
Yeah.
answered.
What I do want to remind people is that while I think the town, and certainly before me under the former mayor as well, I mean, our desire is to be as transparent as we can, to try to answer questions as best we can, but we also got to remember that what FOIA is at heart is a process that obligates and provides anybody, the public, the ability to have access, as they should, to various kinds of records and documents and things that exist. Some of the questions you asked weren't asking for records, they're asking for us to sit down and analyze our policies and to devise records where we're concluding, yes, we can do this, and that's not what FOIA requires. And frankly, none of us at this point are in a position to try to sit down and go through how many page, we have a 80-page
Between the first, the old one and the
manual
current
and
one,
go
so you
through,
have to go through
you know,
both.
every of dozens and dozens of policies and try to analyze, well, who can change that and who can't.
Well, I
Clearly,
was just bringing it to your
whenever
attention
a
at any
policy
rate.
needs to be changed, we will make sure that it's done according to whatever our ordinances or the law requires, and we'll do it transparently. But I can't sit down here and try to write a long
I understand.
analysis,
I was just bringing it to
I
the
understand.
attention with my FOIA request to the, in fact, I sent you a copy of that request
Yeah, I
as
got it.
well as the town attorney.
All right.
One last question. The Mercer Group, I know, was contracted way back when to come up with the classification system and pay ranges. Has that been done?
It's not finished. It's in progress.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Any other comments?
Diane Leader, 306 Palm Warbler. Soon after Will and I moved here in 2002, I had the opportunity to attend one of the emergency preparedness sessions in the springtime, and I found it to be particularly informative. For the most part, though, those are held after we're gone for the summer and after many property owners are gone for the summer. With Matthew last fall, with Irma this fall, I can't help but wonder if we are doing everything we could or should be doing to protect our home. And my thought was it might be useful for council to consider an emergency preparedness session for property owners who are not here generally during hurricane season. There are probably things, as I say, we should be doing or thinking about that we all aren't doing or thinking about. So I would just ask you, to think about that and maybe talk about that.
And we have our chair of our public safety committee.
Well, there you
hopefully
go,
has just
Chris.
listened to that, so,
We'll put it on the next agenda and talk through.
Okay.
yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, great. A couple of weeks ago, I attended the meeting on the new DHEC setback lines. And I don't want to talk about the setback lines. But I would like to talk for a minute about the process. I was stunned to read all the articles in the paper with quotes from beachfront property owners and listen to beachfront property owners that night who claimed that they had never heard anything about this legislation before. And my question really is, does the town of Kiowa have a process to follow federal or state legislation that affects property owners?
Well, we certainly, to the extent that we can, we do follow those kinds of legislative activities that affect property owners. And in the case of this, I mean, we have been following it for some time.
Okay. Did the town have any direct communication with beachfront property owners about this during the last several years?
We did not have information during the last several years of what the specific timing was going to be. I think I think we had probably 1 day's notice on when the lines were actually being released. I think we got an email on one night that said from OCRM they're going to be released the next day. So.
Yeah, my question really, Craig, is not about the timing of when the lines were going to be available to be seen, but whether it might be useful for the town to have communication that the legislature is looking into this. Anybody along the beachfront is likely to be impacted in some way, in some indeterminate way. And I would just, again, toss this suggestion out for your consideration. If somebody follows the legislation, it might be nice for property owners to have a heads up while they could do something about it. I just am so surprised at how unaware of their surroundings so many people are. And I think this would be a great role for the town to step into.
I'm often similarly surprised, yeah.
Pardon?
I said I'm often similarly surprised. I agree with you. Go ahead.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, what we did, just once we found out about the lines, we did get a list of the property owners along the beach, and we did the town sent out letters to each property owner letting them know about the current process. So to the property owners along the beach.
And when was that done, Stephanie?
We just did that once we found out from OCRM in terms of the email, in terms of the dates and everything. We did put together a letter and notice just to put property owners on notice along the beach that may not have been aware of all of this going on. So we did put a letter together.
Yeah,
and send
but
that out.
that's kind of like as the barn doors closing.
Right, but nothing prior. We just did that afterwards.
This has been going on for years,
Right.
and I would think a beachfront community like ours would be more aware of something like that. That it shouldn't come to any of us as a surprise that this is going on. That's all.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. Anyone else? All right. With that, there being no other citizens' comments, we do not have anything that would require us to go into executive session. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We are in adjournment. Thank you all.
Yesterday,
Petra?